Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Hands On with Eloqua for this month in the March user group. We're excited to have you with us, and I think it goes without saying that we're all probably working a little remotely today and becoming far more familiar and au fait with applications like Zoom. So look, it's great to have you with us. And we've got a number of questions to get through. There were a number of questions that were submitted, which was great, along with the review of our service requests, which we wanted to walk through today and cover off those with you as well. At the same time, Q&A is open, and we'll explain how you can utilize that in just a few moments. The agenda today, we've essentially broken the agenda down based on the service requests that we said that we were looking at. And so the bulk of those requests could easily be grouped in these top three groups. So email design editor, the canvas or the multi-step campaigns, and the form design editor. They were really the three key areas that people had questions about. Now, there were about, I think we're at about 10 questions that were submitted this month with registration, and they fall into some of those, but we'll handle those first, and then we'll jump into the others as well. Now, as we go throughout the morning, please, if you do have questions, obviously ask those as well, and we'll make some progress. Let's have a look. So my name is Derek Bell. I'm your host for today's session. Jason O'Donnell, one of our account directors, is also online, and Jason's there to take questions from you as well. So he'll be able to help answer some of those questions as we move through the morning. Now, I will be jumping backwards and forwards between the presentation and into Eloqua to show you a few different things. So let's just bear with me if you can as we make that transition. Let's move on and get into our first question. So the first question comes from Tim in Surrey Hills in Sydney. And he says, we often have event invite emails, which the sales team provide one-off contacts after the main send out deployment. Yeah. Tim, you're not alone. That's the first point. Is it possible to change the setting of an EDM campaign to add one-off email addresses from Excel or manual addition after the EDM has been sent? And absolutely, the answer is yes. So let me show you how you do that, Tim. There's two pieces at play. One is your campaign canvas, and the other is going to be your segment. So I'm just going to jump into any merry old segment there for the moment. But let's have a look at the campaign canvas. So I'm just going to choose a blank canvas for the moment and drop it in. So let's say, now I would assume obviously for your event, there's going to be more information that comes after this, but what you're trying to do, Tim, is control the flow of people as they come into the campaign. And the scenario that you describe is super common, by the way. I imagine that most of the marketers on this call would say to you, you know what, Tim, we have exactly the same problem. We get the list is finalized, the list is signed off, we launch the campaign, and then 10 minutes later, a salesperson says, oh, I've got 3 more people. That's okay. We can easily manage that. The way you easily manage it is to make sure that the campaign and the campaign must be active, but the segment itself is set to this second option. So this second option is to add members regularly until the campaign is deactivated. And then you can select the threshold of times, for instance. So if you set it to every hour, what that means is that hourly intervals following the launch of the campaign, Eloqua will go back to the segment to look to see if there's anybody new in that segment. So if, for example, this was my segment that was sitting here on my campaign, like so. So here it is, it's got 16 people sitting in it. Now, if that campaign canvas is active, and if I come in here and I can either add individual contacts, etc., I can find those, and maybe I can find you, Tim. I can add any Tim to that particular list. As soon as I hit save, that information will then flow through. This number becomes 17 on the canvas. And then once the hourly threshold is reached, then that person will flow through and be sent that particular email. That's the solution. The common mistake I see people make is they launch their campaign with this particular segment, then they deactivate the whole campaign, they create a whole new segment with one person in it, and then drop a second segment on the canvas, dropping them into that email. Not necessary. You don't need to deactivate the campaign. all you need to do is go back to your original segment. But the critical piece is this. And by the way, when I run events, and I encourage all my customers when they run events, is always select this option. It doesn't matter if you don't add anybody, but if you need to add somebody, and often we do, then it's so much easier. You don't have to deactivate the campaign and mess around from that point of view. So simply make that you can't set it as a default, but for event campaigns, I'd encourage you to make sure you remember to select that option. And that's how you do it. That's how anyone will flow through. And you can see there when you're that's adding individual contacts, you can also upload. So even if someone comes to you and says they've got 345 people or 3,000 people that they need to add to the campaign, that's fine. So you can go ahead and upload them, and you'll be familiar with that interface, which is your upload interface. So Tim, hopefully that answers your question. Okay. I will just say, guys, it's going to be a bit of a challenge for me to keep an eye on the chat function as we go through this. So please, if you do use the chat, the guys are watching that, so we'll keep on top of that for you. All right. So Ryan in Melbourne asked the question, how do I incorporate external activities into a lead scoring model? Great question. So if we go back into Eloqua, the first thing that you're wanting to do is obviously have your external activities captured. And I know Ryan does. Ryan captures a lot of activity externally with the people in the audience that he's talking to. But when you come into lead scoring and it's time to then sort of start building out your model, there are a couple of ways that you can play with that information. And we've got a profile and engagement, and you'll see we've got custom objects, contacts, and hang on a minute. No, I think standard activity, shared contact list, custom. Okay. So what you need to do from an external activity point of view is utilize the shared contact list construct. So with shared contact lists, you can push people, just as you're pushing them into external activities, you can also push them into shared contact lists. So let me show you how you would do that. So if you're on a canvas, for example, and you're using the external activity function to add somebody to a external activity, or you wanted to, for whatever reason, it could be in a form, you might be doing it in the form as well. There are different ways you can get them into a shared list, but you can then also follow through the process and use the add to shared list function as you go through that process. So that would just be mirrors of each other. So shared lists can be a big part of lead score models. We use a number of shared lists in different lead score models around, whether it's overall white paper submission, which we have across all of our different forms. Other ways shared lists are really helpful for events like the user group, for example. So we have like an all-time user group shared list that people can be added to and removed from, and so on and so forth. So that would probably be the easiest way to get the external activity data into your lead score model. Ryan, it would be worthwhile potentially having a chat with Thomas or with the team, because in your particular example, I understand you're also using custom objects reasonably extensively. So it may be that some of that activity that you're capturing as external activities could also be sitting on a custom object. And so you'll notice when you come in here to the activity that you can look at custom objects as well. And so custom objects could be another way for you to reference specific types of activity in this sense, external activities. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, let's go back to our list of questions. And the next one is from Andrew in Chatswood. So Andrew's curious to understand a bit more about the account engagement activity dashboard. So speaking with the team at Oracle around the account-based, well, here we go, account engagement overview dashboard. This is all part of a project that's occurring within Oracle right now with the product development team around account-based marketing. And so the account engagement overview is really just, I think the term they used was it's baby steps. So from their point of view, this is really just the very beginning of information that they're able to display. So if you think about it from a technology point of view, a lot of the information that we're looking at here is already in Eloqua. It's sitting there. So I don't want to downplay the effort involved in producing this dashboard, but a lot of that data was already there. It was about producing an interface like this that enables us to see it quite easily. So what this essentially is showing you, and if your organization is large enough to be talking to companies and would see separate accounts or companies as marketplaces in and of themselves, that's when something like this type of dashboard becomes very interesting. And so this is our live database. You can see that our own team are doing quite a bit, which is great. Then the Oracle team, we have some folks at Deloitte. Now, where you see a repeat here of Marketing Cube and Marketing Cube, that comes down to data quality. So I need to have a closer look at that and try and understand why there would necessarily be two. But for most organizations where you have a CRM attached to Eloqua, the construct and relationship of accounts to contacts is all taken care of. So for instance, when you look up here in Eloqua, I imagine many of you, I mean, I could probably count on both hands the amount of times I've ever looked at the account view in Eloqua. It just kind of don't do it, but it's there and it exists. So let's have a look. If I type in Marketing Cube, okay, no, let's try 2 words. All right. Okay, so I can see here, I've got 2 Marketing Cubes, 2 separate accounts. So I need to go back to my source system. In this case, that's the CRM, and have a closer look and understand why I've got 2. And it looks like it's just simply an ID issue of when IDs were extended by Salesforce in this particular case. So yeah, so that's why I'm showing 2 Marketing Cubes in that account dashboard. But the dashboard is just the very beginning stages, Andrew, of what's coming of account-based marketing types of information. The relationship of contacts to accounts is critical because that's how it does the roll up. That's how it's able to see, for instance, that all of our contacts in our CRM, while there are many that are related to a single account at Deloitte, and it's the ID, the unique value that joins those 2 together, that then rolls all of that contact behavior up to produce what you're seeing here on the screen as a single line item for Deloitte being the account, or LexisNexis being the account, or Medtronic, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the critical piece of the puzzle. Now, if you go to the Help Center and look more closely at the account engagement overview dashboard information, there are some tips and ideas and suggestions in there in relation to how to manage and get the most out of this dashboard if you don't have a CRM connected. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that. And if you do have any questions, please come back and we can explore that in a little bit more detail with you. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. So the final point, Andrew, on the account dashboard, as I said, it is baby steps and there's a lot more coming. So we're kind of pumped to see exactly what that will be. Okay, so for Kate in Sydney, let's see. Hi, Kath. Good to have you on the line today. I don't have a response for you on this one. I personally have not noticed the same thing until I saw your comment. Then when I started to play yes, I noticed a change. So I've got that question sitting with the product development team just to see if that's changes that have been made by Oracle or if those changes potentially as a result of browser changes. I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. Oh, wonderful. We have Ren on the line. Thank you, Ren, for joining us. So Ren is one of the product development guys based in Washington, D.C. So Ren, thanks for joining us from all the way over in the US. So Ren has just responded, and it looks like it is an issue, and there is a fix coming for you, Kath, in 20B. So that is super cool. So thank you very much for joining us. So yeah, if you can just hang till May, Kath, you're probably at home, hopefully, working hard, I'm sure. But yes, that's been taken care of. And Ren, just to let you know, Kath said thank you. So thanks for jumping in there. All right, let's jump on to the next question. So insight reports versus segments. So I'd like to reutilize campaign analysis reports I've created in Insights as an example, as an Eloqua segment. An example is extracting the bounce back names to resend to. Is that possible? And that's from Sam in Melbourne. Hi, Sam. Just checking to see if Sam's with us today. Perhaps not, or maybe she's in a room with a colleague. Well, no, I don't think many of us are in rooms with colleagues at the moment. Okay, so I would, without being able to go into more detail with Sam to understand exactly what she's trying to do, I'm going to suggest that perhaps she's coming at it in the wrong direction. So insight is great to gain that information, have a look at that information, etc., and understand it. However, if you're wanting to actually do something with that information, you could actually do the same thing in segments within the platform. So let's have a closer look. If I jump into segments and find a segment I've already got, here we go. And sorry, I just want to do that. There was a question here from Danny. When will send time optimization be available, and how long will you need to build up the data results from campaigns for send time optimization to start working? All right, so the commitment from Oracle was that we should hopefully see that in the first half of 2020. So that would translate to the 20B release, Danny, which is in May of this year. My understanding is in the second half of your question, in relation to how long will you need to build up the information, if you think about it, that information is actually already there and is already sitting against every single contact. Now, if you jump into the Help Center, Danny, there is a little bit of information around send time optimization and giving you a little bit of understanding of how it works and how we can apply it and all those bits and pieces. What I might do is make sure I put a link into the blog post following the event, the webinar today, so that you can see that in a bit more detail. Alrighty, so back to Sam's question. So from a segmentation point of view, because the key thing that I understand that Sam is trying to achieve here, as an example, is extracting the bounce back names to resend to. So you've got the ability to either use segments to identify the audience to begin with. So for instance, if we look over here, we've got marked as a soft bounce back, and you can apply a date range for when that happens. You've also got hard bounce back, but if it is a hard bounce back, you're not really going to be able to talk to them again because they're a hard bounce back. So this will help you identify them very quickly, and you can also make it more specific, right? So you could say, for instance, to a group, first of all, that has been sent a specific email. So let's have a look at the user group emails. Here we go. I'm going to say at least one time after 1st of March, and who have been marked as a soft bounce back after, may as well say the same time frame, like so, and hit save. So there would have been undoubtedly some, yep, there you go. So I had 16 soft bounce backs of people that were sent that particular email, which was the invitation to the user group that you're on right now. And that soft bounce back was recorded after the same date, so the 1st of March, 2020. Now, that's helpful, but a slicker way to do that would be to play with shared filters. So shared filters, remember, shared filters is really just like segmentation. It's really no different, but the difference is we can do segmentation on the fly, if that makes sense. So we come into shared filters and you'll see the interface is exactly the same. So I say here marked as a soft bounce back and sent a specific email. I keep changing my logic around there. So I'm just going to 0324 and 001 at least one time, and after the 1st of March, and after the 1st of March. So now what I'm able to do, and I can save that, If you click on the little chevron, actually gives you the chance to name it. Actually, just so I remember to get rid of it. So soft bounces, like so. Copy that. So that's done, and hit save. So now what I'm able to do, let's pretend if we go back to the campaign canvas, and we've got our original audience. We then send out the email to groups of people, and that email will be our invitation to the user group. Come on, baby. There we go. All right. So that's flowing through. The normal process would then be for you to wait for a period of time. Now what we're going to do is ask if the person is a shared filter member. So the shared filter that I've just created, called Demo Soft Bounces, is going to ask that same question, but now it's going to ask it in the flow of the campaign. So this is now really taking advantage of the automation versus simply having to then wait for this to finish, cut a segment, create a new canvas, etc., etc. So what I would probably do, just to flesh this out and make it a little bit more real, be to say, did they open the email, yes or no? If it's a no, I would then potentially ask, did they open? So this is, so were they a soft bounce back? Let's. Something like that. And then potentially continue the conversation. So you would, if they were a soft bounce back, you may try that again. You could potentially, keeping in mind, you can't loop them back up here because you've already sent them that email. And so the campaign canvas won't allow you to send the same email to the same person twice. So you'll need to do a save as of that particular asset and then add it down here. So shared filters, and there's a couple of questions actually that talk about shared filters. So we'll come back to this shared filter in just a moment. But just remember, shared filters is a way for you to segment during a live campaign. We always think about segments as kind of the starting point of our campaign. Shared filters enable you to take that same logic, but then apply those filters while the campaign is actually in motion. So that might save you some time. Alrighty, now Darren in Singapore. Darren in Singapore, if you're on the line today, let's have a look. Okay, it doesn't look like Darren's with us. This is very much an escalation question to the Marketing Cube support team. It's, I'm afraid it's not something I'd be able to assist you with. This is around authentication, and I think it has to do with, from memory, single sign-on type of solution. So many of you on the call today probably experience single sign-on within your various organizations, and this is one particular way in which that is done. So I'll leave Darren to contact the support team to help with that particular question. Okay, so this one is from Elizabeth in Auckland. Hello, Elizabeth. Let's see. Hi, Elizabeth. Yep, you're on the line today. Good to have you with us. So Elizabeth is wanting to show us how we can get data to flow from Eloqua, or from a form specifically, through, in this case, to Salesforce, which is their CRM platform. So Elizabeth, thank you for the question. And look, you're not the only one. There's a number of other Salesforce CRM customers on the line today. So what I'm going to show you now, keeping in mind integration, especially as I sort of outlined in the email, integration is quite unique for every, well, it's not overly unique, I shouldn't say it's unique. It's a little different for every single customer. And so the Marketing Cube support team would be in the best position to give you very specific responses. But let me show you in a nutshell, essentially how most organizations would go through that process, Elizabeth. So if I go to a form, actually, in fact, if I go to the form used for today, which is this one right here. So this is the form. This is a templated form. There's very little that changes about this form, but the processing steps is where the magic happens in relation to getting the data into the CRM platform. And while I'm just going to zoom in there a little bit, depending on where you are, that might be a little bit hard to see. you'll see that there's a number of different ways to do this. Now, Elizabeth, the primary way would be something like add to program builder or add to program, which is program canvas. You've also got post data to server and also run integration rules. So if you're not 100% sure what's going on, I would appreciate you can look at that and go, okay, which one? All right, so generally speaking, in years gone by, it was all done largely through the program builder. And so the program builder is another area within Eloqua that actually does the communication between Eloqua and external systems. So whether it be NetSuite CRM, whether it be Oracle CRM, Salesforce CRM, Microsoft Dynamics CRM. That's why your question is quite poignant, because it really kind of suits all those CRM platforms, Elizabeth. So the program builder typically is the way that that was done. Now, oh gosh, probably 2 and a bit years ago now, Eloqua released the program canvas. The program canvas will eventually, and it probably will be a few years away at this stage, I'm sure, replace program builder. The big thing about program canvas is its ability to look a lot like the campaign canvas. So you see a much easier flow diagram, and you can add apps to it, which is a really big function. And it's also much faster than program builder. But essentially, it's these two options. It's either going to be program builder or program canvas that we utilize to get things through into Salesforce in your example. So at Marketing Cube, we're helping everybody else move to the program canvas, but we haven't done it ourselves yet because we're too busy helping you guys do it. So in our world, you'll see here, I've got an option so that I've just simply taken, just lost it, where'd it go? There it is, add to program builder. And so here it is right here. And so what it's doing is we're giving it a range of suggestions, and we're able to control when that information goes through. So we choose the program, and so there can be many programs, and you can see there's a whole range of different programs that we have set up. But this particular program is generically referred to as CRM update. And it happens in steps. If you think about looking at this list of activities here, essentially what it's doing, it's going into the CRM and it's looking to see if there is a contact that exists with that particular email address, yes or no. If it's a no, it then heads off to the lead object. Is there a lead there with that email address, yes or no? If there's not, well, then it's going to create that lead in Salesforce, in this case, Salesforce for us. Now, most CRMs will have different rules, etc. In the world of CRM, most will have problems with no last name or company name. So if they're blank, that produces an error. Okay, but if the contact does exist, it just gets updated. That way you avoid duplication. Same with the lead. If there's a lead already in the system with that email address, again, it will simply update that lead. But that, to answer your question, Elizabeth, is really how information gets from a form directly into your CRM, and in your case, into Salesforce. So I hope that answers your question for you. You will have specifics, I'm sure, and I'd just encourage you, Elizabeth, to reach out to Thomas or any member of the support team. They'd be able to assist you further with that one. Okay, so we have another question from across the Dutch, and it's from Trudy in beautiful Auckland. Hello, Trudy. Let's see if Trudy's on the line today. She's not, but her colleague Robert is. Hi, Robert. So Trudy's asking, is there a send X email if recipient clicked on a specific link, and Y email if they didn't? Okay, let's translate that to a canvas. So let's use this little canvas here. I'm going to zoom out a fraction. All right, so segment members, email goes out. We might wait for a period of time. And in this case, we're not so interested in opened. We want to go straight to the question, did they click? So I'm just going to move that out of the road. Let's start with this. Okay, so when we ask this question on the campaign canvas, did they click on the email? That is, it's the most common one that I use, by the way. I don't always do what I'm about to show you, but I do it from time to time. So when we ask the question, do they click on the email? You can imagine in any email, there could be anything up to 5, 10, or 15 hyperlinks as an example. So which click is Eloqua referring to? Well, Eloqua is referring to any click. So if there was anything they clicked on, that's a yes. If they clicked on nothing, well, that would be a no. Okay, but if we go back to Trudy's question, Trudy wants to know if they clicked on a specific link. Okay, so the answer to that question, again, as we looked at earlier, is using shared filters. So just as we built this shared filter a few moments ago, we can also look at shared filters that talk about a specific link. And I've probably got one I can... Okay. Actually, the website visits. That's fine. Let's just have a look. So what we could do, for instance, is clicked on, opened, here we go, clicked specific emails, clicked any email, clicked emails from groups, etc. So where you would actually want to head is if it's a landing page, so it would be, because in your email, the link is either going to be a link to a landing page or a link to a website page. So if it's a landing page that you're directing or wanting to know that they've visited, that's fine. You can come in through here and find a relevant page. We'll take the 2015 August user group. And you can say at least one time, and you may want to be specific, for instance, and do it within a date range. So thinking within the context of your campaign, it may be worthwhile to think about a before or a within operator versus just simply within the last or on or after, etc., etc. So once you've done that, that shared filter can then be dropped onto your canvas, just as we dropped this one on, and this one was to ask the question around soft bounces. You would drop the other shared filter on, and so did they click on the email? Yes, they did. Then you would go from there to there. And so this shared filter would then ask the question, did they click on this specific landing page? And you can add multiples, by the way. So it doesn't have to be just one. You might have an email with 3 or 4 important links in there. And as long as people click on any of those 4, you're happy to move them through the campaign, well, you can do that. So shared filters are a great way to do that. That's where you take the generally vague and move to very specific. So did they click on something? Fabulous. However, if you want to get very specific about the links they clicked on, shared filters are the way that you would do that. From a naming convention point of view, I'd really encourage you, if those are very specific questions you're asking, just save the shared filter the same name as your campaign, just to make it easy for you. All right. And I think Alicia in Melbourne, what's the best way to track in-email link clicks and use this action to filter segment members through a multi-step campaign? So Alicia, I'm hoping that with those 2 previous shared filtered questions that hopefully would answer your question as well. So the caveat here is that you do talk about filtering members through a multi-step campaign. So if you wanted to have control as to where people went through, so let's say you send out this email, and that email has 4 different options in it in relation to buttons to click on. Then once you determine if they've clicked, you may want to set up a shared filter to one shared filter for button A, button B, button C, button D, for example. And so that would be kind of like a flow. You would just have them dropping down into each other, like so, asking the different questions. Did they click on the first link, the second link, or the third link, etc.? And then you may head off in different directions depending on which link they clicked on. And the thing you must always remember, of course, from a logic point of view, is that they may well have clicked on the first link. That's fine, so they'll head off in that direction. It's likely impossible, though, that they also clicked on the other links. So what you would probably want to do here is have the most important click from your point of view as a business be the first question that you present to people. So you head off in that direction. But yeah, Alicia, that's how you would essentially flow people through the campaign canvas, is using shared filters to get very specific. Okay, so Robert threw a little bit of a curly one at me. So Robert in Melbourne, So my questions are more aimed at the future month agenda, and that's okay too. But I thought I'd throw them in here because they're of interest to everybody, I think. Playing with CSS code and also looking for great examples of landing pages made with the design editor. So first one, CSS code. The design editor gives you some options, and we had a little bit of a chat actually just to let the rest of the group know. And I'm not sure, Robert, exactly the timestamp on when you submitted this question. But essentially, the design editor gives you the flexibility of adding CSS. But fundamentally, what you want to avoid is having to add CSS to every single email. So a far better way to do it is to build out your template, add the CSS to the template, and then save it as a template. So that when I come in here, and these are the out-of-the-box Eloqua templates, but if I go into any of these emails, for example, or landing pages, that the CSS is already embedded in those. The next step from there, in order to make that the most effective use of your time, is to have that CSS sit remotely from Eloqua. Let me explain to you why. So this is the landing page for today's user group. And just as an example, you'll see when we get a closer look that you've got both JavaScript and also CSS at play. And we use the JavaScript to manipulate some of the different functions of the form. Let me show you what that looks like. I mean, it's not super riveting, but it's kind of cool in relation to what it does. So the CSS is located here under Advanced Styles and Additional CSS. And so if you look closely, what that actually is doing, it's actually pointing the landing page to a server of marketing cubes, which is where our CSS sits. So what's actually happening there is the CSS is not really in the landing page within Eloqua, it's actually sitting on a server elsewhere. Now the benefit of doing that is that should we make changes to the CSS, everything that we have currently running will automatically be updated. You can imagine the downside of having to come into, for instance, say, 300 landing pages and to come in here and manually copy and paste, copy and paste, copy. I mean, you'd go mad, right? So the cool thing here is with this process is by having it sit externally to Eloqua, you don't have to worry about anything. So if we all arrived at work next week and Adrian decided that Marketing Cube is no longer red, that we're going to be green, well, we could actually make that change in a few minutes and pretty much everything would be taken care of from a styling and CSS point of view. So that's what it is. Now, the question that Robert had specifically was in relation to some of the code and the instructions, and I'm completely out of my depth here in relation to really helping you with this one, Robert. So what I need you to do is to contact our support team. If you just contact support@marketingcube.com.au, if you just kick that process off via an email. And whenever you send information through to our support team, it's always really helpful if when you do that, that you include the name of the assets that you're referring to. So even if it's a campaign canvas, if you can give us the name of the canvas, if it's a landing page in question, if you could give us the name of the landing page as well. And so the name will always appear here in the top left-hand corner of the screen. So that would be a good place to get started, and the team can help you with that one. Okay, and I think this was the last one. So this one from Marja in Newcastle, and I thought this was more of this is like Q&A. This is a statement, not a question. All of the basics. So I'm not sure, Marja, that we've covered all of the basics today necessarily, but let's jump in a bit further and see what else we can talk about. Okay, so a lot of questions there, as you can see, and we've got very little time left. So I'm going to prioritize very quickly what we look at. So most questions related to the design editor specifically. So when we looked at all the questions came in that related to email, most of those were very specifically about the design editor. The primary questions that I seem to get as I'm looking at emails, they fall into two areas. One is in relation to my email doesn't look as good in Outlook as it should. Why doesn't it? And the other part relates to really utilizing the functionality of the design editor. Now, why doesn't my email always look as good as it should in Outlook? And Outlook is the bane of every modern marketer's life. Look, there are certainly some tips and ideas that are slightly more technical in nature that our support team can assist you with. And the best way for them to be able to assist you is to understand very specifically the emails that you're having some challenges with. Sometimes it can come down to the way the platform has been utilized, but it's also understanding there are a couple of limitations. I'm not going to say there are many limitations, but there are some limitations that come with the design interface. Not enough of a limitation that we don't use it, I can assure you. I've said goodbye to the HTML emails altogether, and we only use the design editor at Marketing Cube. But some of the things that I've noticed that people are doing that are kind of causing more pain than it need to. So one of them has to do with, and it's actually easier if I assign some background color so you can see the difference there, just so you can see a bit of contrast. One of the issues that I see people play around with is horrendous spacing issues. So what's happening there, for instance, is they might want to put in sort of 3 columns of text, for example. So we'll drop information in here. So what I'm seeing, for instance, I saw one the other day, which was a little bit like this. So we had, I think it was the lists of people. So it was people who had joined an association, for example. So we'd taken some, some bullets and put that information together like so, probably adjust the spacing there. And then they wanted a little bit more information above and below, right? So I'm just gonna pinch that and make that a heading. So I'd pretend that's a heading, for example. I'd make that red. All right, so happy with that, but then we just want a little bit more space above and below. So then we add some padding, right? We might do something like that. And then we copy it, and we bring it across. You've got the copy function right here. So bring that over like so. So it looks great like that. But the problem is when you go into mobile view, you've got these monster gaps. You're like, oh, I don't want that. Okay, so the easiest fix for that is to change your thinking a little bit, right? So what you're doing is, for cosmetic reasons, you're wanting to put spacing above and below, which is perfectly acceptable. Most people would. That makes perfect sense. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it right back to 0. And same with that one. And I'll show you the difference in just a minute. So if you want that vertical spacing above and below, that's fine. What you probably want to do though is use the option above. So use the title to add some spacing, and then you can add an option here at the bottom. So now we've got full width layout, then we have layout with 3 columns, and then again we have layout with 1 big one. So full width. So I use my spacer again, and I drop that spacer in. I could be happy with that. Now when I go to mobile view, you'll see my list now looks like a list when it's viewed in mobile. And so at this point, you might want to think, okay, 30 is probably a little bit too much. So maybe I bring it back to 20, check what it looks like in regular desktop view. Yeah, I think that looks okay. So that's just one tip. If you're playing with columns, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 columns, the secret is don't apply the padding to the content within the layout with the columns. Utilize the padding in the single column above or below. That's going to give you a much better result when you go to mobile. As you can see, much nicer view there instead of big chunky spaces in between. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions here. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, absolutely. So Robert has said adding a CSS style sheet link to landing pages seems like a much better idea. Yeah, look, it totally is. It's going to give you much better control, makes it much more sense from an administration point of view. Yeah, it's a much better way to do things. Okay, so we have a question here from Malcolm. Hi, Derek. if you're open to on-the-fly questions, yeah, we do on-the-fly, that's good. See below, no drama if you would prefer to wait. Let's have a look. What are your top 3 database housekeeping tips? We're looking at removing hard bounces and global unsubscribes, all remaining CRM honored by Eloqua if they come back through. Any quick wins? Yeah, absolutely there is. Okay, so we've only got a couple of minutes left, but in a nutshell, and this is actually really helpful for everybody, Malcolm, you're not alone on this one. So the key thing, and I give you this information or these ideas in the context of you being integrated. So your CRM and Eloqua are integrated. So Malcolm is basically saying, I've got a challenge from a housekeeping point of view that I have hard bounces and people who globally unsubscribe over here in Eloqua. Now, they're no use to me in Eloqua, and obviously there's a commercial cost to keeping them in Eloqua. I really want to try and get rid of that. So the easiest way to do it is to use your integration and make some changes potentially in the CRM. This is what we've done. So what we've done is we've set up an option in the CRM at the contact level that is called inactive. So it's simply a checkbox, just a checkbox that is called inactive. So what we do is we come into Eloqua and we say, Eloqua, give me all hard bounces, and I export that information out along with the CRM IDs, etc. I bring that back into the CRM platform. I upload them into the CRM platform where I add a new column, which is to check the box for the contact or the lead in the CRM platform that now marks them as inactive. When I said to you, make changes to your integration, the idea with the integration is that it will ignore any contact or lead that has a checkbox of inactive that is done. So I go through that whole process. Then minutes later, I take that exact same Excel file that I've exported out of Eloqua. I now import that back into Eloqua with the import purpose being to, in fact, delete those contacts from Eloqua. And so that way they don't ever flow back in because the integration has been configured to manage that process for you. There's a little bit more to it. And when you think about it from a global unsubscribe, really you could utilize the same process, because what you don't want to do is have hard bounces marked as global unsubscribes, because that really destroys your stats, because that's not what happened at all. They didn't globally unsubscribe, they simply left the business. So yeah, there are ways that can be managed. And so it becomes, at Marketing Cube internally, we probably do that once a month, once every 6 weeks. We just go through that process and update the relevant platforms. It literally takes me from beginning to end. It's probably no more than a 20-25 minute exercise. But yeah, absolutely, Malcolm. Great question. And probably hopefully information everybody could use. So Sam, hey Derek, missed the first 30 minutes. Just wondering if you went through the insights question. We did. And Sam, look, I'm happy to have that chat with you offline if that's okay, because we've already answered that one. Cameron, hey Derek, do you recommend dealing with alignment spaces of images versus text, given your example of aligning spaces, the bullet points? Hang on a second. Do you recommend dealing with alignment spacing of images versus text, given your example of aligning? Okay. Vertical alignment. Sorry, Cameron, I just read the next bit down. Yeah, vertical alignment. Yeah, vertical alignment is a little bit of a limitation. There are some things that can be done from a CSS point of view. I'm literally exploring this for a customer at the moment whose design very specifically calls for something like this. I'm going to show you some really off colors, but just so it's really crystal clear. So if I make that like that, no, that's not going to help you get the point. Hang on a minute. Canvas, change the canvas. Yeah. So what their design calls for is something very specific in the spacing. And so in this particular example, I promise you they're not green and gray and all this. What I'm trying to highlight is the white borders, for instance. And so using the borders that I've just done, it means, because the borders at this stage can only be applied holistically. By that, I mean top, bottom, left, and right. There's what we call the active edges. And the active edges only has a single control. So I can't control the top thickness, the bottom thickness, the left and the right, etc. So Keeping in mind that you do have the flexibility to play around, you've also got, you can apply additional borders at the layout area. So I applied those borders, the white strips that you can see there, that's applied at the content level. However, if you go to the layout level, you can then start to manipulate and play with borders here as well. So you can see now, if I just make that some other slight color. So you can see there now how that's been applied differently. So, and that's just the column level. But again, the unfortunate thing is that doesn't give you a super amount of control from a vertical point of view. So what I tend to do is focus on my copy to keep my copy to the extent that it kind of balances out and looks okay. Always making sure that when I go to mobile view, that it also looks okay. With mobile being probably the main focus to make sure it looks fine there. But from a CSS point of view, we can manipulate the column constructs, etc., both in email, I believe, but also on landing pages. So if it's super critical to you, then that's something that we could certainly explore and give you a hand from a CSS point of view, Cameron. Again, the support team would be able to assist you. That one's a little above my pay grade. Yeah, okay. So Cameron's just said, that's my current approach too. We're just curious to know whether there was a better WYSIWYG approach for my users. At this stage, not so. If it was permanent though, the CSS might be, the reason I say permanent, if it's something that you're consistently doing, then maybe some CSS could be helpful because it'll just take care of it. No problems at all. All right. Campaign canvas, just quickly, I think we're almost over time. I won't bother going back to the slide deck, but the campaign canvas, there are obviously a few questions there. One question that came up a couple of times over the last few months related to the different reporting options. So those reporting options, as you know, under campaign fields, these relate to the dashboards and feed through to the dashboards. So this particular client had started to get themselves organized. They were focusing on the values that they needed. They got that all sorted. They've updated the pick list so that on the campaign canvas, they can select the relevant values in these particular fields. However, they found that when they got in here and started to look at some campaign information, that there were values popping up in these different lists that didn't exist in theirs. Okay, so how did that happen? Okay, so what's happened there is you've had conscientious marketers over the previous period who, before you've come in and modified these to be single select pick lists with preset values, out of the box, when you get Eloqua, they're just simply free text fields. So you can type anything you want in there. I love Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse rules, whatever you want, you can type anything in there. And as a result of you doing that and launching your campaign, they will then become values that you'll see over here under your campaign types, etc. So you'll have, lead gen, webinars, etc. And I love Mickey Mouse. So now, unfortunately, there's not much you can do about that because it's then attached and hardwired and associated to that particular campaign. So that's where it comes from. It comes from conscientious marketers seeing value in doing it, but potentially maybe not understanding the full ramifications of doing it. Over time, it will just simply disappear because you'll always be looking at the last 3 months, last 6 months, last 12 months, etc. So eventually that data will simply disappear out of the decks. But until that point, not the case. Alrighty. Well, guys, I'm sensitive to time. Mind you, I could sit here for another half an hour if need be, but I don't want to do that to you. Look, wherever you are at the moment, I appreciate some of you will be probably working from home and experiencing slightly different working environment than we all have been over the last little while, but I really appreciate you making some time to join us today. Look, I will stay on the line if you do have some other questions and would be very happy to answer those for you. Let me show you this last one. This was a great question because it did pop up a few times and I did have a slide already built for it. So the question that generally, if I went through the service request and interpreted the question, it was, how do I know for certain that a campaign has sent emails. Okay. Let me show you directly on the canvas. And the canvas is the smartest way to observe this. So how do I know for absolute certain? So I'm going to pick on the user group again. Oh, it doesn't really matter. I'll pick on anything here. This was a campaign we had today. So when you're looking at the campaign canvas, over on the far right-hand side, you've got this slide out menu. And this slide out menu has a few options. The one you want is this one, which is the reports area. And in the reports area, there's what we call operational reports. And to answer that very specific question, how do I know for certain a campaign has sent emails? All you want to do is click on this one, which is called campaign email statistics. Now, this is giving you actual numbers. And so you'll see listed here the IDs, which generally don't mean too much to us, but you've then got the name of your emails, the subject line, and then what's actually happened. Email sent, email delivered, email opened versus unique email opened, etc. But this is what you want to know. It's this information right here. That's what will answer your question. That's a consistent, easy way to look at it. Be aware that there is a filter on this. So if we go back to the last 3 months, then yeah, no, this was only a couple of weeks old, so that won't change. But yeah, just be aware there is it goes back as far as 3 months to give you an answer. But that's the quickest way to know for certain that your Eloqua campaign has in fact sent emails. And it tells you email by email by email as people go through that process. All right, so I will call it quits there because it is a little bit over time. But as I said, I'm happy to stay on the line. If you do have any questions, please stay on the line and I'm happy to answer those for you. But look, really appreciate you making some time to join us. As I said, everybody stay safe, wash your hands. Maybe you've got to sing happy birthday to yourself twice and have a great day. And we'll be online next week or the week after with some more webinar information to help you work out how to run webinars better with Eloqua, etc. So we'll be in touch and you'll hear from us. Thanks very much, everybody.